of course, he needed that with all those kids. Okay, J.S. Bach's Jesu. Start a program, I think. Next is a group of Chopin pieces. I'll play 2 etudes, a nocturne, and the Fantasy Impromptu. Chopin wrote 24 etudes, and they each one concentrates on a particular technical aspect, trying to improve octaves, passage work. The first one is nicknamed the harp etude, and you'll see why when I start playing. So it imitates a harp. And the second one is a typical Chopin wandering melody with a counter rhythm in the left hand, which makes it very tricky. And then a nocturne, it's opus posthumous, which means it was published after he died. And it's sort of a precursor to his second piano concerto. There are a couple of themes that he borrows in the second concerto, the second movement in particular, and the third movement from this particular nocturne. And the last piece is the Fantasy Impromptu, which I'm sure most of you know, and maybe you'll catch some rainbows in the middle section. You'll see what I mean when I get there. Just a couple of things about Chopin. He didn't like to play in public. And during his lifetime, he only performed 35 concerts, which in those times was nothing, because everybody was touring, because that's how you made your money. And he was a very slight fellow. He was only 5'7" and weighed less than 100 pounds. And he did have some health issues. Yeah. Is somebody's hearing aid? Do you hear that?
I hear somewhere.
Yeah. Can that be corrected by any chance? Because I could hear it when I'm playing. No, I guess you can. Okay. Is that what it's called? Squilling? Squealing.
I hear it.
You hear it? It's coming right.
It's from here someplace.
Okay. Well, okay. So I'll play all four of these pieces with. That's it. Well, it stopped.
No, it hasn't.
No. Oh well. I just, if it's a big deal, I don't want to. But it's just kind of distracting sometimes my concentration. Okay. What was I going to say now? Anyway, yeah, the four Chopin pieces. ear when I play. I use my ear when I play, and I'll continue to. I'm not a prima donna, but
Yeah, that's not.
prima donnas will leave the stage.
Yeah.
It's on somebody's phone, I think. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about Beethoven, who's another one of my favorite composers. This is the 21st sonata, nicknamed the Wallstein Sonata. Why is it nicknamed the Wallstein? It was the name of the guy who paid him money to write it, who commissioned it. So that, he honored him by that. Beethoven wrote 32 of these, and this is considered a breakout sonata where he's really pushing the demands on the piano. Beethoven had a much smaller piano. It was called a forte piano, and it didn't have nearly the volume that this piano. There we go. And you know, he was in his early 30s when he started going deaf. And in fact, there's a very touching testimony called the Heiligenstadt testimony that he wrote for his two brothers, and sealed it in an envelope and said, "Do not open this till after I die." And he talks about his frustrations and his anger with losing his hearing. You know, for a musician, the most important part. He even contemplated suicide at one point, which is very sad. And there are reports that he took the legs off his piano and put it on the wooden floor, and then laid down on the floor and put his ear to the floor and played, and he could hear the vibes. You know, it's a very touching scene. I can imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah. Anyway, but like I said, this sonata kind of pushes the envelope with what the piano can give sometimes, but nothing compared to the last few sonatas, like his Opus 106, which is fourth from the last. It's called the Hammerklavier, and Hammerklavier meaning I'm not sure what Hammerklavier means now. I mean, my imagery is hammering the clavier, Hammerklavier. But anyways, it pushes the piano even further. Let's see anything else about Beethoven. He was, I'm sure many of you have been to Vienna, and you'll see a plaque on a certain building that says Beethoven lived here. And then a couple blocks later, you'll see another plaque, Beethoven lived here. And he had over 30 residencies in Vienna. He was not a good renter, leaser, whatever you call it. He had trouble staying in places. And his poor housemates, they were lucky if they lasted 2 weeks. You know, yeah, he was a difficult man. You know, I think I mentioned this maybe last year, but I love the line one English writer said about Beethoven. He was deficient in polish. to the part of the program where this was a request from Hannah. Hannah's a big Liszt fan, I guess, because I was going to play this program a couple weeks ago. She said, "Can you wait till October 22nd?" I said, "Sure, why is that?" She said, "It's Liszt's birthday." So she's a groupie for Liszt, I guess. Liszt was probably the most colorful figure of the 19th century in the piano world, particularly. A couple innovations before I talk about these pieces and about Liszt. Prior to Liszt touring as a concert pianist, the pianist would always have his back to the audience. The piano was straight back. That's because there were no solo recitals yet. Liszt was the first to play solo recitals. He had such a, I don't mean this in a negative way, but he had such an ego. He said, I can entertain them all night. They don't need anything else, you know. I mean, because before there was a quartet, there was an orchestra and a pianist, and the pianist would often conduct from the piano. So he was facing the orchestra. And this is what Mozart did with all his operas. You know, he conducted the operas and he played the continual parts. That was the persona at that time. But Liszt changed all that. And another thing he did, because he was a handsome dude, and again, a little bit of an ego, he turned the piano sideways so people could see his profile. Before, you know, he didn't want us to look at his back, you know. He didn't want them looking at his back. So there's a couple things that he was famous for. Oh, and a third thing, he was the first to play from memory. So all we pianists, we have to memorize all our music thanks to Franz Liszt. Apparently Clara Schumann did too, Schumann's wife. And the first time Clara did it, the critics kind of looked down on it and said, who is she to play without the master's notes in front of her? They thought it was pretty arrogant. Anyway. So these two pieces by Liszt, the first one is called Consolation Number 3. And just as the title suggests, it was written for a dear friend, death of a dear friend. And I'll follow that with, you notice I played 2 etudes of Chopin. Liszt called his etudes concert etudes. He kind of elevates them, yeah. And the name of this particular concert etude is called Un Sospiro. Today is, like I said, I mentioned Liszt's birthday. He was born in 1811. And he lived 75 years, which is quite a time for in that era. Poor Chopin lived. I mean, he was born 2 years after Chopin. Chopin was born 1809. Liszt 1811. Chopin only made it to 40. So Liszt had 35 years on him. Yeah. 2 more to go. Rachmaninoff's, he was just a fabulous pianist, but a fabulous composer. Unfortunately, when he came to America after the Bolshevik Revolution, he had little time to compose. He composed most of his works while he was still in Russia. So he left Russia around 1917, 1918. And the first work is called Melody, and it's sort of a sophomorish work, sophomoric. That's the word, sophomoric. One of my colleagues at UNCG said, if he submitted the original version in composition class, he would have gotten a B. Yeah. But anyway, but Rachmaninoff revised it in 1940 when he was much more mature, because he wrote this when he was still a teenager. Yeah. So it's Melody, and that's followed by the G minor prelude, which is sort of the march, one of his famous preludes. Yeah. A couple things about Rachmaninoff. I just read a book this summer by Fiona Maddox called Goodbye Russia, and it talks about his years in America mostly, and the subtitle of the book is Rachmaninoff in Exile. He was always in love with his homeland. He always missed it. When he was in America, he always wanted to get together with Russian people, eat Russian meals, talk Russian. He never really got the English language down. He could speak some words, but he had no interest in that. He was true core Russian, and he played so many concerts. Like I said, he didn't have time to compose anymore. This bothered him a little bit, but he was very successful. I mean, one of the reasons he came to America is because he loved American cars, and he bought Hudsons and Lincolns, and and when he traveled, he went to England to concertize a few times, and he traveled always first class. And Steinway and Company always gave him a piano wherever he went, even on the ship when he was going abroad to play. Played at the Promenade concerts in London, at Albert Hall. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But he was a tortured soul in a lot of ways, though. Stravinsky called him. He was Rachmaninoff was very tall, and Stravinsky called him 6.5 feet of scour. He never smiled, But that's in family with his grandkids and all that. And with friends, he was very, very, very social. Loved to tell jokes, and so the public because he walked out on stage so severe, and hardly ever smiled. That was just the persona he gave. Yeah. So the Melody and in E and the G minor prelude. usually we have an intermission, but and talking uses one side of the brain, playing uses another side, and sometimes they don't switch. Anyway, I do have an encore. Would you like an encore?
Yeah.